Hello and welcome to Ubisunt. As you know, Ubisunt is Latin for where are they now? And it is our platform to keep in touch with our alumni and feature their accomplishments. And so basically, this is a series of conversations with former students who are leaving a positive mark and doing important things after they graduate from our department. And today we have the pleasure to have with us Christine Marroquin.
Hello.
And hello, Christine, how are you?
Good. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. And you know, to talk, discuss issues, and also to see what you're doing and how you're doing. So um, I remember the first time you walk into my office, and
I remember too.
you remember that. I mean, it
Yeah.
was very sweet, and you had your baby with you, which Celine, which now how old
Selena.
is she? Selena, how old
Uh-huh.
is she now?
She's 6 now, so
Wow,
then she must have been almost 2 years old.
wow, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. I remember she was kind of like maybe a toddler, but she was almost like you. You had a
Uh-huh.
her, and you came to find out about our programs, our graduate programs, and it was, I mean, I knew the minute I saw you, I knew that you were a perfect fit for our department, and you really were very interested in the culture in and 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 I want you to share with our other students and
Sure.
prospective students
Okay.
why, what brought you to us, what was it?
Well, so it doesn't sound very glamorous, but I think that it was the proximity to where I lived at the time. I was a mom already. I had a small child, and I needed a place that was, convenient, commutable, and also, that had the resources and the opportunities. And also, I was interested in the graduate assistant uh, position because I do have a lot of student debt for my undergraduate and a small graduate program. It wasn't really obviously it wasn't a master's, but it was a certificate in management that I got from NJIT. So I have enough student debt. I didn't want to get more, and I knew that you had these opportunities. Mm-hmm.
What I have to say is that even though I would say that Spanish is not your first language, but your Spanish is, and it was then excellent, and it is. But more than the language, you are very much committed to the Spanish culture and the
Yes,
Hispanic and Latino culture,
yes, I am.
and you're very sensitive to cultural differences. And why is that?
Okay, so that's a great question. So I grew up in Queens, New York, and my grandmother was from Puerto Rico. She was born in Puerto Rico and came to New York City when she was about 12 years old. Um, and so I grew up around Hispanic people from every country, in Latin America and Spain too. And so it was a culture that was kind of like very second nature to me. Um, and that's probably why I'm able to speak with a very
Fluent.
maybe
Yeah,
authentic, I don't know,
very fluent. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, accent. There was also a family that used to take care of me when I was a kid. It was a fellow student of mine. Her name was Maria Granados. If she watches this video,
Okay.
and her family was from Nicaragua. And so I don't know for how many years, maybe 3 years or so. After school, every day I would go to her house, and her mom would babysit me until my mom got out of work and could come pick me up. And so every day after school, I heard Spanish. I was immersed in it. I never really understood what they were saying, except for maybe a few phrases here and there that I picked up. But I just was constantly hearing it either with them talking or the TV. And I was determined. I said to myself, one day I'm going to speak Spanish and I'm going to know what they're saying and I'm going to be able to converse with people. So that was kind of the
I
goal.
remember
Yeah.
from you as a student and being in our classes and your desire and your willingness to excel all the time and to do, to do research and to write. And I remember all that, and I think that that was perfect for our program because, as you know, for many reasons, some of them are practical, some others are for situations, uh, current situations. But our program is quite diverse in terms of possibilities. We try to focus not only linguistic aspects of the language and also translation and interpreting, but also, of course, literature and cultural studies and literary studies. So many students find a lot of opportunities in the things that they want to do. So basically, our students, or at least we try, more or less successfully sometimes, but our students sort of take a very active role in our program in gearing their career in the direction that they feel is going to be the best for them. So may I ask you, what direction was that in your case, and to what extent you think that that served you well for what you're doing now?
Okay. So, one of my main goals at that time was to get the master's degree so that I could eventually go on to do the doctorate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, what was the part of the question?
Well, to what extent
Mhm.
that diversity within the department in terms of different approaches and different coursework and different opportunities and directions, to what extent that was good for you or not?
Yeah, no, it was great. I liked that there were a lot of literature classes, which is what I was interested in for doing my doctorate, and also like the opportunity to do independent studies and things like
And
that.
and also I remember that we had a very active group of students at that time. I remember it was the time in which a literary endeavor was created by a group of students called Escribivientes, which was like a magazine that, in a way, allows students to express themselves in different ways by writing critical essays, but also writing fiction or literary um, pieces of work. I remember in the origin of that magazine, they focus on different countries, maybe Puerto Rico, maybe Spain, Mexico, and and you had some active participation there, right?
Yes, so I remember when I was finally accepted into the program and everything, I passed a flyer on the bulletin board that said that there was a translation contest. And if you wanted to participate, all the instructions. And so I definitely wanted to do that because I just wanted to get involved. I didn't know anybody on campus. So I said, I got to make friends, get to know people. So I jumped into that. And I had taken a translation course at Rutgers, and that was completely independent. It wasn't connected to any program. And so I had that knowledge, preliminary knowledge of the idea behind translating. Should you translate literally? Should you translate symbolically, etc.?
Mhm.
So, and the story that needed to be translated was called El Ilustre Ano del Toro. And so basically I decided that I would translate it not in a literal way, but in a way that would make sense culturally.
Mm-hmm.
So the story took place in a small town in Cuba. And so I kind of translated that into a small town in the Appalachian Mountains, which is a place that I had a chance to visit when I was in high school. Through my church, we had done some mission projects over there. And so anyway, my translation won the first prize, which was very exciting. And it got published in the issue that celebrating Mexico.
Wow, fantastic. Congratulations again. That was quite an accomplishment. And then you also published a poem, right?
Yes. So then the following year, they asked for submissions for the following issue, which would be celebrating Puerto Rico. And so that, I'm sure I would have submitted my poem regardless, but that really caught my attention, being that my grandmother was from Puerto Rico and I had that connection. So I wrote a poem and I submitted it and it was published.
Great. Congratulations. And is that the poem that you're going to share with us today?
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful. Can we hear it? Can you read it for us?
You want to hear it now? Okay. Okay. So let's see. Okay.
What's the name?
Okay, so the name of it is Ay Blanquita.
Uh-huh. Okay. And we have to say that the poem is in Spanish.
Yes, the poem is in Spanish.
You wrote in Spanish.
Yes.
It's fantastic because normally people say that it's very difficult to write especially poetry. It's assumed that everybody's going to write in their first language, not probably in an acquired or learned language. But I mean, you show us that it's possible to write a beautiful poem in your second language, let's say. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And if you can, please do share the visual of it, because I will. I think it's a very visual poem. Mm-hmm. And I think the structure of it and the format is also important to understanding it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here we go. Ay, Blanquita, dime, cuéntame el paisaje del pasado, tu linaje de doctores y abogados, de tu casa y de tus hijos, tu marido lindecito, de tu vida tan bonita, cuéntalo. Te lo cuento, mi linaje de esclavos conquistadores, de los amos tantos que los servidores, de la pobreza e injusticia, del racismo en la noticia y de toda la violencia, cuento yo. Ay, Blanquita, ¿qué sabes, angelito, del dolor? De noches frías sin dormir, o el sopor. Oh, sé más de lo que piensas, he viajado como el viento, lo que he visto y lo que siento, hablo yo. Ay, Blanquita, tu piel es suave como tela de algodón, pero mi sangre hierve con el reggaetón, con las fiebres y el dengue, con la salsa y el merengue y las almas en palenques, sueño yo. Ay, Blanquita, tu piel es pura como frescos manantiales, tus ojos brillan como luces celestiales. Tan amable el piropeo, pero me cansa ese juego. Si escucharas mis palabras, por favor. Ay, Blanquita, tu piel de nieve ya se está enrojeciendo, tu pelo rubio ya se está encaneciendo. Ah, de niña ya fui vieja, con los clavos y el concreto, y secretos indiscretos creció. Soy blanca a tus ojos, pues no ves hasta el trasfondo del espejo tan borroso de vapor. A mis ojos somos uno, somos sangre y triunfo. Soy tu hermana y tú eres mi corazón.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful poem.
Thank you.
And now that you read it, it's so important and so beautiful to hear your voice because you give it a very um, ironic, political undertone. Um, and I wonder if, not that we need an explanation because poets don't need to explain their poetry, but I wonder if that poem, which obviously is something that comes from your deepest feelings about belonging and about identity and about um, the idea of physical identity for the way we are perceived by others in terms of our looks, as opposed to the real deeper identities that sometimes are not so obvious. So
Absolutely.
all that, I think that it's like the beginning, the trigger or the starting point of a, a research that you're doing now, right?
Yes, yes.
and and that is, I mean, I would like you to tell us what you're doing and how this poem connects
Okay.
with your current research, your
Okay.
current project.
Thank you. Okay. So basically, well, I'll just start by saying a little bit of like, I mean, I talked about how I grew up in Queens, but so I'll tell you who my parents were. My father is a poet. His name is Robert Prohaska, which is why I insisted that my maiden name be put in parentheses so that if anyone ever read the poem, they could connect me to my father one day.
Wonderful.
And he comes from, his mother was of German heritage, but born in America, and his father was of Czech heritage. And he always says he's from East Dubuque, Illinois, but it's really Dubuque, Iowa, because everything is in Dubuque. That's where the hospital is and the schools and all that. And so, and then my mother, her mother was from Puerto Rico and her father was African American. And but the crazy thing is that this was a secret that was kept from me, not my grandmother's identity, but my grandfather's identity of being African American. And I found this out in 2017. And the reason I found out about it was that we always talked about our grandfather, but we never talked about him a lot. We didn't have a picture of him around. And I always thought there was some sort of mystery going on. For example, my mother would say that he was Puerto Rican. And my aunt would say that he was Cuban. And then my grandmother used to say that he was Puerto Rican adopted by Cuban parents. And I just kept saying to myself, how come no one can get this story straight? You know, I said, something's not right. And I knew I couldn't go to them to find out the truth because I felt that they were lying. I felt like something wasn't being told to us. So, and at that time in 2017, my mom had already been diagnosed with dementia. And so her memory was going downhill pretty quickly. And so I said to myself, I have to find out what's going on before it's too late to talk to her about it. And so one night I just signed up for Ancestry.com. And I started looking for my grandfather's name, which was Vincent Piedra, or Piedra in Espanol.
Mhm.
And it's a very unique name, right? It's an American first name, a Spanish, seemingly a Spanish last name. And so finally I found his name, because there's not a ton of Vincent Piedras living in New York City. And at that time, he was born in 1915. And when I found the census record with him and his family, his brothers and his sister and his parents, their classification, the race classification was Negro. And I was so confused at that point. I said, well, if they were Cuban or Puerto Rican and they had dark skin, I'm sure they could have been classified as Negro. But then I started analyzing their names. And they all had American names. My great-grandfather was Charles. My great-grandmother was Edna. And then my grandfather's siblings were Charles Jr., Shirley, and Kenneth. And I said, well, these aren't Spanish last names. I'm sorry, first names. And so I just kept looking at more of the records and more of the records. And then I came to the understanding that my grandfather was African American. And I was like, had so many emotions, let's just put it that way, because I wanted to know why this had been kept from me, because obviously that's an ethnicity, that's an ethnic group, and that's an identity. And so why would my mother lie about this identity? Well, of course, we can also come to our own conclusion. But I confronted my mom. I said, what did you never tell me about my grandfather? And she didn't want to tell me. She said, well, what are you talking about? I don't know what's going on, And I said, Mom, I know what's going on, so please just tell me. And she said, well, maybe I wasn't truthful about his ethnicity. And so basically, we talked more, and she explained to me how her father, my grandfather, had raised her not to talk about it. And so now you have to understand the political climate. My mom was born in 1949. Mm. Much different world than today, right? Mm. And on my mom's birth certificate, it says she's white. And so
what is interesting and in a way is that and especially now, right? I mean, I think that we are it's a moment of change and awareness.
Yes.
And I think now it's very painful for all the things that we are witnessing, and this social injustice that seems to be even worse, because probably before it happened, but there were ways of not exposing it massively, so it was more like
the injustices.
They were more reduced to a community, or maybe to a movement, or to a time. But now it's, everybody with a cell phone is a journalist, and it can expose what's going on at the time it's going on. And so we are more aware of what's happening, and it's disturbing. But being an optimist and being a person who believes that things will improve, I think that once we move on from this moment of transition, and we will be a better society, because we will probably accept and embrace all the differences in an honest and true way. But going back to your story, it's beautiful to see how you had this moment of basically as the Greek would say anagnosis, right, of discovery of this
Okay.
truth, and then
Yes.
that prompted you to do this research. So tell us a little bit about your research, what you're doing
Okay.
now.
Okay. Well, so um, it wasn't immediately, but um, with the encouragement of friends and just thinking about how many stories and how many anecdotes I have just of my own life and from my family, that I would like to write a book about all these memories and all these events and things. And so I'm basically working on a book about my family's history. My plan is kind of to do like, I'm not sure if I want to do it chronologically or maybe a reverse chronology of the narrative. Because what's interesting when I found out more about my grandfather is that his great grandfather had been adopted, and the people that adopted him were a Cuban immigrant and an African American woman. That was the couple that adopted him. And not only did they adopt him, they adopted one other child and also fostered many other children. They had some sort of boarding home or foster home, I guess you could call it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought that was fascinating, that even though I'm not biologically related to them, there's still that legacy of, right, of immigration, of
Yeah.
inter-ethnic marriage, and just love, because this couple, my great-great-grandparents, adoptive great-great-grandparents, were never able to have children because there's no record of them having any biological children.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think that led them to take care of all these children that weren't theirs, these
That's
orphans, really.
So your project, your book, is it going
Mhm.
to be like a memoir or a family history or a fictionalized family history, or is it going to be more documentary in terms of exposing facts? In what direction you want to take it?
I think I'd like to take it in the direction of maybe a memoir,
Mhm.
or a family history. Um, I really don't know. I would love to work with like someone, I'm glad that we're doing this interview. If there's any publishers out there, please contact me.
Oh, there you go. You might find somebody interested. But it's fascinating how you in a way, if we can just join the dots,
Mhm.
um, this exposure to literature
Mm.
and this desire to write poetry for a student's project in our department, in a way started all this idea and desire to go deeper into your family history. So that to me is fascinating to see how sometimes an event that it could be nice and it could be happy or whatever, but it doesn't seem to have so many ramifications, and then it starts creating something in our students that it's that's why we love to um, get in touch with those who finished and then they go on with their lives, but it's always fun to know what's going on because um, beautiful things sometimes happen after they finish. So, are you going to pursue your PhD eventually? Are you going to uh, do that or not for now?
So, the pandemic I think took us all of our lives in different directions.
Yeah.
Um, Basically, it pushed me to start to homeschool
Mhm.
for a number of reasons. And so that's what I'm doing now. I mean,
Uh,
besides, you know.
Selena and Gabriel, right?
So yes, Selena is 6 and Gabriella is 16 months.
Well, so Gabriel is not,
Yeah, Gabrielle is not studying yet exactly,
but
Selena,
Selena probably takes all your time, right?
yes, yes.
Mhm.
And we're working on reading, and we're working on, she was, she had some developmental delays, so we're catching up with a few things. And she's doing great with her reading now.
Wonderful.
And so the idea of the PhD has been pushed to the back burner.
Back burner, of course.
Uh-huh. Um, and I think that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do the PhD, because I felt like, well, if I want someone to pay attention to my ideas or write a book, I should have a PhD, right? But I think I've kind of gained the confidence, and I'm pretty sure like just finishing the master's degree helped, just doing that master's exam, and then I have the letter here on my bulletin board, to this day, that says, you passed the exam with
Oh,
flying colors. And
of course. Well, as you know, being a Lacanian, I always say that, right? That
right.
the comprehensive exam is psh, psh, the Lacanian castration, right? Then you become the divided subject that you need to be, right? It's
Yeah.
it's that threshold that
Yes,
says,
it is.
now I know.
Uh-huh. It is. It is amazing. But
Painful before, but it's very satisfying afterwards.
yes, absolutely.
Tell
And
our
so,
students who are reluctant to take the comprehensive exam, right, that they should do it.
yeah, yeah. So
Well,
now I feel confident that, what, maybe I can write this book without having to go get a PhD first.
well, I think that you have a lot of good ideas, have a lot of material, and certainly you have the talent and the disposition. So why not go ahead and do it? And then, of course, if you feel that after the pandemic you want to go back to school and pursue a PhD, that absolutely, why not?
Mhm.
It's always good to do it. But thank you so much, Christine. It's
Okay.
been a pleasure
Thank
to
you.
talk to you and to see that you're doing wonderful things, and putting all your knowledge to good use. So I appreciate this, and okay, thank you again. And this was Ubi Soon. Where are they now? And ask all your friends to watch our show,
I
because
will.
we have a lot of nice programs here at the Spanish and the Department of Spanish and Latino Studies. Every week we have something to share with our students and friends.
Okay.
All right.
Wonderful.
Hey,
Thank you so much.